That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Hope Gap, which opens March 6, 2020, courtesy of Screen Media Films. Originally premiered at the 2019 Toronto International Film Festival.
Hope Gap is the story of a married couple who, after 29 years, break up.
Yeah, basically. It's the inverse of marriage story. That's a divorce story too, technically. It's another divorce story.
I was thinking that this film felt like Marriage Story if they had stayed together longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really, really like this film. It stars Annette and
Bill Nighy as Grace and Edward.
Edward is a school teacher.
Mm-hmm.
The opening scene with them together is her confronting him at the dinner table about why he's not more passionate with her. Like a very common argument married couples have, and it devolves very quickly. Like, she slaps him, she flips the table.
Yeah.
Their adult son is visiting for the weekend, witnesses it. His reaction makes us think that this is a common scenario, the two of them sort of fighting, with the dad being very passive and just accepting that his wife comes for him, as they say, all of the time. And then the next day, the dad tells the son, I brought you here basically because I need you to be here with your mom when I tell her I'm leaving this bitch.
For another woman. Yeah.
For another woman, the parent of one of his students.
Yes.
Who he happens to fall in love with. They've been dating for a year. And on that day that he tells his son, he has his bags packed and he's ready to go. He even tells him, you should be able to get out of here by 4.
yeah, he has it planned out.
He has it very well planned out. Gosh, this movie's so good. Annette Bening as Grace is, she's just so good.
Oh yeah, she's always really good. In fact, she's one of the, if we're bracketing these English language white ladies that are deserving of an Oscar that have never won, she's up there for me with Sigourney Weaver and Glenn Close and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Sure.
She deserves to be better appreciated, I think.
Yeah, this role, I think she deserves some recognition. So good.
Unfortunately, I think this is the type of film. It's being released in limited theaters in March. I feel like, in several weeks, no one will be talking about it.
What else do we like about it? So Bill Nighy, he's old. He reads older than Annette Bening. He is older than her, but he reads older. She's very energetic, vibrant, I would say eccentric. And he is just this very plain, dry, old white man. Very likable. We feel bad for him because it does seem initially like she is maybe abusive towards him.
Yeah, she
is verbally and emotionally abusive.
She is the aggressor.
And physically. But it's based out of love, which is an interesting topic because I don't think that behavior is appropriate, but considering where it's coming from, it's the writing is so good because I didn't leave feeling that one is right or wrong.
Right.
It's just
It was written and directed by William Nicholson. This is his second film as a director. He hasn't directed since 1997, but he's a very notable screenwriter. He was Oscar nominated for Gladiator. He wrote the last version of Les Miserables. He also wrote Nell. But he's obviously a very gifted writer. And this is based on a play he wrote called The Return from Moscow.
The writing is so beautiful. The dialogue,
I think
the story, the acting.
Bening is spot on because she's actually quite unlikable in a lot. Because there's a sequence where they finally come together after some time in a barrister's office where she's acting out.
Just everything. It's beautifully shot. The use of poetry in general, I don't find that appealing in film or anywhere else. But in this film, it's done so beautifully. I think the film opens with her reading.
It's a Yeats poem.
And it ends with her reciting a poem. And I think it just fits so perfectly. I don't know. Also, I don't know what else to say except I love this film. I think everyone should watch it, especially if you're married. Because I related to it. I will say there is a scene and a line of dialogue that I think is one of the best lines I've ever heard, which is Annette Bening's character, after time has passed and her husband has left her and he's living with his new bitch, she goes to visit and realizes the woman is there. And they have somewhat of a confrontation. The husband is obviously trying to mitigate, but his new lady is like, no, I got this. So Annette Bening is like, I just want to know how you could do this. How could you basically steal a husband from his wife? And that lady says, I basically saw 3 unhappy people and now there's only one. And I thought that was some of the best writing I have ever heard. So good. It's just a sobering film about love, about relationships, about happiness that I think is very subtle. Annette Bening's characterization isn't over the top.
No.
She's a colorful character, but it's not like a caricature of anything. The son, that dynamic, who's played by
Josh O'Connor, playing Jamie.
He's kind of thrown in the middle, and the way both of his parents kind of use him as a way to manage their own relationship is troubling, but I think relatable to a lot of people.
And interesting, yeah.
Very interesting. I don't have anything good. I only have good things to say.
I did his Josh O'Connor, who is also in God's Own Country, which I think you'd like, directed by Francis Lee, which is more of a coming out romance.
So the weak points of this film.
The weak points of the film, I would say, revolve around the son having to speak with his coworkers who are sympathetic to him.
Yeah, I felt like those scenes with his. So he has 2 little friends who he kind of shares his feelings with, but they don't seem very helpful.
No, and I think it's just a way for him to express emotionally on screen for
Which
us,
makes sense, but I didn't need that. I almost would have liked that he's kind of alone in his thoughts and having to deal with his parents' issues would have been a little more satisfying to me. But I don't think it's bad. It's just
because I think there's enough by showing how he is kind of having to pivot between them, like when Bill Nighy gets a new phone number and doesn't want Annette Bening to have it.
I could have canceled out his friends and had more time with him dealing with his parents.
Yeah,
and that back and forth. But again, I mean, it's just a very little thing. Also, I feel like, for my taste, his parents seem kind of old for however old he's supposed to be. But I don't know. I mean, people have kids after 40, so I guess. I don't know if he's supposed to be, in his late 20s. Or if he's, just out of college.
I could have done with casting that would have been about a decade older for that character, but...
I think Bening and Nighy are perfect, so I don't want to replace them. But I do think maybe had their son been a little older. Although then... Because they do make a big deal about him being, especially the mom. Well, the mom makes a big deal about him being alone and single, living alone without a girlfriend. But the dad seems to really like that he has this very sort of quiet life where he controls it. But I didn't think because that actor, Josh O'Connor, he looks young. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's why is it weird that he would be single and living alone? Because he looks like he's in college. So it would have made better sense to me if he would have been in his 30s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, because he's more like his father, and the fact that he's very quiet about his personal life, and his mother's always pressing. Even approaching that, she ends up taking a job working for some hotline called Friendline, and she
comforts people in hospice.
And she has a gay coworker who she's like, well, my coworker thinks you're gay. And
are you gay?
But it's also so subtly passed over that it doesn't even register.
No,
which I kind of like.
Yeah,
it's just a gentle conversation. She
acquires a puppy who she names after her, ex-husband. Mm-hmm. So there's humor built in, but I cried a few times and laughed a few times. It's really good. I would give this film 4 out of 5 stars.
I would give it 3.5 out of 5. But I did really like it.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's it.
Bye.
Bye.